Okay, so we are going to put a liner in this bag. I am going to show you how I do it. You can do this by hand, but I'm going to use a sewing machine for part of it. So what we're going to do is lay out our fabric, lay our bag on top of the fabric. So you want to make sure that the folded edge of the fabric is at the base of your bag, or the bottom part of your bag. Right. And then I leave about half an inch on each side of the bag. I'm going to cut about half inch on this side. I do not sew, so this is always an adventure to do this. I can do very basic things. All right, and then when we put the lining into the bag, I only want it to go up to the top of these squares. So I'm going to end up folding it down to here when I put it into the bag. So I want about an inch or so extra space for the hem. So I'm going to eyeball this. I'm going to cut crooked. I guarantee it. So I don't sew because I like to do all of my sewing projects by eyeballing them. So everything comes out crooked. All right. So that's about where you want your fabric to be. All right. So we've got that. Now I'm going to flip it inside out so that the right sides are together like that. And now if you want to sew properly, you would pin up the sides, but I'm not going to do that because I don't like to. So I'm just going to sew up both of these sides and give myself a little bit, about a half an inch inside the fabric. So I'm going to sew that real quick. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, now that these sides are sewn together, you've got a little pocket there. I'll leave it like this. And what I'm going to do now is measure the bottom of my bag, the width of the bag here. So just that bottom square. So I've got my bag and I'm just going to look at this bottom square here. So I'm going to measure that. If you don't have a measuring tape, you could use a ruler. You could use a piece of yarn, a piece of, I mean, even if you were to just measure it with something like this and you know that's the width that you have, you don't need to know the actual size of it. You just need to know how wide it is. All right, so mine is about 4¼ inches, about there. So what we're gonna do is take the corner of this bag and pop it open. I'm going to, so that is the side that we just put the seam up. I'm gonna flatten it like that. So we've got a point. The other side is our seam right there. And I'm gonna measure 4¼ inches here. So right there is my measurement. And you can make a mark with a cone or chalk, whatever it is that you have. Just going to draw a line right there. I'm going to do that on the other side. So I've got my point. Make sure it's nice and flat. And 4 1/4 side to side. Right there. I'm going to make my line. Okay, and the reason that we are doing this part is so that the bottom of the bag, when the liner is in the bottom, it lays flat on the bottom of the bag because um, we don't have a pointed bag, or we do when it's laying down, but we want it to be flat when it's sitting. We want this to actually be the bottom that touches the table. So we're going to make the liner match the structure of what we want. So that line that we made, we're just going to sew that across. If you need to do this by hand, that's fine. You can use a needle and thread, or if you have a sewing machine, you can zip these lines real quick, then you can also do that. All right, so we have our bag. So it's square on the bottom now. And you could leave these in the bottom or you could trim them off. It's totally up to you. I'm just going to leave them there and fold them underneath. All right, so we have the structure of our bag liner right there. This is a part I would suggest using pins or clips or whatever you might have for that. This is the tricky part. Put this liner in the bag. It's in there like that. And just gonna make sure that the seams are in the center of the bag here. So there's that seam. And I'm going to just place a little clip right there so I keep the seam where it belongs. I'm gonna do that on the other side too. Right. And then I am going to pin or clip the sides here. So I know where this fabric is going to land on my squares. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is fold this seam over Make sure that that's touching the bottom. It's nice and flat to the bottom there. I'm going to take my liner here. I'm going to fold it over. And like I said, I want it to hit the top of the squares. So just about there. I am going to use some pins. I'm just going to work my way all the way around this bag, just pinning where I want the liner to land on the squares. And because you have these pinned down or clamped down, they should all stay in place. And periodically, I just make sure that I still have the bottom of the bag in the right spot because it likes to shift. All right, so the lining is in there. It touches the bottom just fine. Nice and flat. So I'm going to sew up these sides. If you would like to use a needle and thread, what I do is thread this needle and I take both ends of this thread and I tie it together at the end. Just a knot like that. Goodness. All right. So tie it in a knot like that. And what you'd want to do is start from underneath your piece like this, go into the yarn there and pull it through. And before the knot pulls through that yarn, go ahead and take your needle and go um, in between those two threads that you tied together. So there's a little space there. So go in between those. Oh, if I can get it like that. And it knots itself. It's just looped in together. All right, so our tail will be hidden underneath our fabric by doing it this way. And now you're going to go up into your fabric with the tiniest stitch. If you have um, a thread that matches the lining color, that would be the best option because then you won't see it. But I just want to do it in a contrasting color so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go in. Hope you can see that tiny little stitch right there. And I'm going to go back underneath the fabric. And when I do that, I'm going to grab the next stitch there. And it's only the back part of the stitch, so you're not going to see it on the outside of the bag. So if you can see that tiny little stitch there. So you're going to do that all the way around. I'm going to go up under, my needle's under the fabric, pushing up through the fabric, catching a tiny little stitch in the fabric, going back down through the fabric and catching a little piece of yarn on the stitch underneath. And when you are tightening your yarn, just make sure you're not puckering it like this. Make sure it stays flat. And again, going from underneath the fabric, catching a tiny piece, going underneath or back under, and catching a tiny bit of yarn. Tiny bit of yarn. So you will not see these stitches from the outside of the bag. The only place you'll see the stitches are right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sew this since I do have a yarn that, or I'm sorry, a thread that will somewhat blend into this yarn. I'm going to sew with the machine. I'm going to sew about the same distance here that I have with this, and I will show you what that looks like when I'm all done. I'm just going to trim off these ends really quick. And in a moment, I will show you why I crochet and I don't sew because my seams are so terrible. And it's okay for you to laugh because it's funny. Okay. And there is the liner of our bag. It's so nice. I am actually going to use this as a laptop bag. And I needed to use it tomorrow and I wanted to make sure I had a liner in it. So, and just look at the seam here so you can see it's sewn inside already. And you really cannot see where the sewing is on the outside. So it blended in really well. You can see it a little bit right there. But you really cannot see any of the stitches, which is amazing. And I love it. But that's what it looks like on the outside. But see my seams? They're uneven. They're not all the same height, but it fits in there. And my computer will love its new home. So there you go. I hope you guys have a great day.